Hello everyone. Give you a minute to get on. We are going to learn the Mishnah. There's a yesterday we didn't do the summary of the top. We are holding in Tractate Shabbos, the Klal Godel, chapter 7. Klal Godel is the name of the chapter, and we're holding in 76A1. And look at the at number 2. Number 2 in the note, it says Rabbi Menashe advocates a third opinion, more stringent than the two already mentioned, namely if someone stored a particular amount of an item, whoever carries it out is liable on account of the owner's intent. Okay? If you stored an item, someone took that item, if someone stored a particular amount of an item, whoever carries it out is liable on account. The fact that you're storing an item, it shows that it's important for you. Things that are not important are not being stored. Okay. So over here, it summarizes the three opinions of Tanakama, Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. So Tanakama says that item not stored, minimum amount for all people. Stored item, any amount. So if it's item that is not stored, there is a minimum amount that you only then you become liable. If you took less than the minimum amount, you're not liable. Okay? And Tanakama says also that this applies for all people. When it comes to stored item, a whole different level. Stored item is any amount, even if it's a tiny little thing, but it's put away. Somebody put it away, and you carrying it, you'll be liable. And that's for the person who did it. But for all people, item not stored is for all people, and then stored amount is for the storer, the one who put it away. According to Rabbi Shimon, minimum amounts for average person who considers it significant, and according to Rabbi Shimon is more lenient, saying minimum amounts are you only become liable for minimum amounts, and it's for the storer. And according to Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, item not stored, it's not applicable at all, unavailable, or he didn't say his opinion in such a case. But stored items, any amount for anyone. This is I would say that Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar would be the most stringent opinion. So this is where we ended off yesterday. We'll start today with the Mishnah. David, are you with us? So the Mishnah 76a1, after stating that one is not liable to a chatas for transferring from one domain to another, unless one carries out both a quality means that you store it, and quantity is the amount that people consider of sufficient value to store. The Mishnah begins, okay, good morning. I see people watching, but I don't know who it is, so I just want to make sure you're there. Welcome back. So the Mishnah begins detailing the precise minimum quantities of various commonly used substances. This particular Mishnah discusses item used for animal feed, what we call animal fodder, or food for animals. Now, David, you might need, you're gonna need, I don't know if for today or for tomorrow.
No, today they need it.
Yeah, so today you might need the third book, the one with the 3 stars. I don't know if you have the one with the 3 stars, but we'll start later. We'll get to the Mishnah, and that Mishnah is already with the third book, the 3 stars book. It's that it is also a fourth one?
Yes.
Yeah. So, okay. Okay, you have it. Wonderful. So Amoiti 7, one who carries out processed straw, right? That's for animals. Kemlo, if he follow, is liable if he carries out as much as a cow's mouthful. Eitza, if he takes out eitza, kemlo fi gomo. So eitza logically says that it's food for the camel, but the Gemara will identify what it is. Omir, straw. Omir is straw. Kemlo fi tole, as much as a lamb mouthful. Asovim, grass. Kemlo fi gedi, as much as a gedi, a kid, mouthful. Alishum valev tzolim, leaves of garlic and leaves of onion. Lachim kegorgeres, if they are fresh, they are moist, so they are the equivalent of dried fig. Yaveshim kemlo fi gedi, and if they are dry, as much as the kid's mouthful. And they, any of the above mentioned species, cannot be combined with one another because they are not alike in their prescribed measures. So this is all about taking something out from one domain, obviously, to another on Shabbos to feed the animals. So my eitzah, so what is this eitzah, which we said before probably is the food of the camel? Amar Rav Yehuda, teven shel minei kitnis. It's a straw of various types of beans. Because Rav Dimi Omar, when Rav Dimi came to Babylonia from Eretz Yisrael, he reported the following Amoraic dispute. Amoiti teven kemloifi for legamol, in the case of one who carries out straw, as much as a cow's mouthful for a camel. Rabbi Yochanan says it's liable. Rabbi Shimon, the son of Rish Lakish, said, the son of Ben Lakish, said that he is exempt from punishment. It could be that it's the grandchild of Rish Lakish because it says Ben Lakish. Yeah. So, or Rabbi Shimon himself was the son of Lakish. Anyhow, but Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish said he's not liable. In the evening, Rabbi Yochanan stated that the transporter is liable. But in the morning, he retracted his opinion, ruling that the person is exempt from punishment. So just like Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish said. Rabbi Yosef said Rabbi Yochanan did well retracting. But again, what is the case over here? That the person took out as much as a cow's mouthful for a camel. It's a food for a cow, and he took it out for a camel. So he can't really feed the camel with that food.
Why not?
Because it's a cow's food.
Yeah, but
we said each one has its own food.
The camel can eat with the cow.
Eitza is for camel, and teven and straw is for the paw. But he took out straw as much as the cow's mouthful for a camel. According to Rabbi Yochanan is labo, Rabbi Shimon says potur. Then Rabbi Yochanan retracted and says that he's agreeing with Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish that he's potur. We soon see why he's potur.
Okay.
Amar Rabbi Yosef Shapiro Rabbi says I agree with Rabbi Yochanan that he retracted. The aloi chozel legoma, for the measure of straw the transporter took out is not fit for a camel.
The measure.
Yeah, the
stuff.
measure of straw the transporter took out is not fit for a camel because he did cow's mouthful.
It's not big enough. It's too big. I don't know what. Okay, let's go.
Probably not big enough for a camel.
Okay.
Therefore, since he took out the straw to feed, a camel is exempt from punishment. Straw is for the cow. So Omar Abaye Adraba Kedemikor Mistabo Da Chazelefo. He says, on the contrary, as Rabbi Yochanan said at the outset that he is liable, makes sense. Why? For the measure of straw the transporter took out is fit for a cow. Accordingly, he should be liable for taking it out. Since it fits for, even though he took it out for a camel, since it fits for a cow, it should be, the person should be liable.
What's the Avera that we're talking about here exactly?
Carrying.
Okay.
Remember, we just discussed before, there's two things about carrying. Quality and quantity.
Okay.
You're taking something that is valuable, and you're taking enough of it. The measure of it. Straw is not valuable, but you take enough to feed your cow, it becomes valuable. And whatever, various types of beans for the camel becomes valuable because that's the meal to feed the animal.
Okay.
Regarding one who carries out straw as much as a cow's mouthful for a camel, no one disagrees that he's liable. When did they disagree? It is in the case of one who carries out bean straw as much as the cow's mouthful for a cow. And the dispute was stated in reverse. Rabbi Yochanan said that the transport is exempt. Shlaki said he is liable. It's the other way around. Not like we saw in the Mishnah. Rather, Rabbi Yochanan says in his potu, Shlaki says he's chav. Not like we saw in the Gemara. In the beginning, that Rabbi Yochanan says chayav and Shlaki's potu. Rather, the other way around. So Rabbi Yochanan potu. Why did Rabbi Yochanan say potu? Transporter is exempt. You see the transporter.
Yeah.
He said because eating out of necessity is not considered eating. What does that mean? It says in 20, while a camel normally eats bean straw, here the person did not take out a sufficient amount to feed a camel, and while he did not take out the bean straw for the purposes of feeding a cow, and insufficient amount to do so, a cow does not usually eat bean straw. The fact that it can be fed to cows in cases of necessity does not matter. Hence, a person cannot be held liable for his act. I guess in a situation where the cow is starving, you might eat it. This does not matter. So this is the logic behind Rabbi Yochanan's reasoning. Why is patur? Because eating out of necessity does not constitute eating. It's not considered eating.
So you don't have to allow the cow to starve. You give him enough so he won't starve.
Yeah, you're allowed to feed your animals on Shabbos. Your animals,
Right.
you're allowed to feed.
I don't have to.
Right.
You're obligated to.
Obligated to feed them, but you have to be make it in one rishus.
I got you, but here he had an emergency, so I'm not saying you should give him a whole truck.
It doesn't say over here that there's emergency.
Well, it said in the footnote. You read.
No.
It said.
No, it says if a cow eats it out of necessity, in general, if a cow eats something out of necessity, we're not considering it eating.
Okay.
Not that that is pikuach nefesh that he had to eat.
Okay. So if you're carrying from one rishus to the other, you're still doing the avera to feed the cow that needs it for necessity.
Well, if you go by the logic of Yochanan, and he says that it's not constitute eating, then you can look at it two ways. You can say maybe you should be patur because it's not constitute eating. Maybe you can say if it's constitute eating, at least he fed the cow, so maybe you shouldn't be chayav. But if it's it's a constitute of, let's say it's considered eating, not like Rabbi Yochanan view, then he did the melacha. If he did the melacha, he should be liable.
I got that.
You understand? He should be liable.
So
Rabbi Yochanan says he's not liable because he didn't do a melacha.
Right. Okay. Well, it's a judgment.
Why it's not? Why he didn't do a melacha? Because the cow doesn't really like it.
Right.
It's not the food. It's not the
eating because he needs
necessity, because he needs it.
Okay. All right. And now we get to the lamb.
Rish Lakish, on the other hand, said that he is liable. Why? Because eating out of necessity is considered eating. According to Rish Lakish, since he took out enough bean straw to satisfy a cow, he is liable.
So he's machmir.
Yeah, because even if it's not, even if the cow is eating out of necessity, the fact that you took enough to, because remember the cow eats less than a camel, so you took the amount that the camel can handle, you give it to the cow, so it for sure will satisfy the cow. So the fact that it has enough, that's what makes it.
Okay.
That's the reasoning of Rish Lakish why he says he is chayav. Straw, one who carries out straw is liable if he carries out as much as lamb's mouthful. It was taught otherwise in a bais as much as a dried fig. This and that are one amount. A lamb's mouthful is equivalent to a dried fig. Leaves of garlic and leaves of onion. Lachim kegegeres, if they are fresh, the equivalent of a dried fig. And if they are dry as much as a kid's mouthful. The Mishnah then concluded, and they, any of the above mentioned species, cannot be combined with one another because they are not alike in their prescribed measures. They cannot be combined for the more stringent of them, but they can be combined for the more lenient of them. But can any things that are not alike in their prescribed measures ever be combined to equal a particular minimum amount? Question mark. Vatanan habeged shloisho. The minimum size of beged, of cloth, that contracts tuma is 3 tefachim by 3 tefachim. Bless you. 3 tefachim by 3 tefachim. That's the size. V'asak arbo al arbo. The minimum size of sack is 4 by 4 tefachim. Va'er chamish al chamisha. A hide 5 by 5. Mapot shisho, the 6. It comes to a mat 6 by 6. Usnei alo, and the Bais are taught concerning the Mishnah beged v'asak, the cloth and the sack and the mat, mitzvot in zeimzeh, combined with one another to complete the minimum amount with regard to ritual contamination. Rabbi Shimon said in explanation there, Matam, what is the reason that those types of material can combine? Because they are fit to become contaminated through sitting. The reason these various materials can combine is because they are fit to become contaminated through sitting. However, if they would not be fit to become contaminated through sitting, they would not combine. Why then should the different types of feed combine? Feed of the animals. Why then should the different types of feed combine to create liability for carrying on the Shabbos? The Gemara says, Rava said, here also the different types of feed are fit to be combined for a sample. A sample. Someone who sells various types of feed piles them all together in front of his window to advertise his stock. He puts them in a display.
Yeah.
So there is a use for it. A stringent feed can therefore complete the minimum amount of a more lenient feed. Okay. Says in number 1, someone who sells various types of feed piles them all together in front of his window to advertise his stock. Indeed, he prefers to combine them, for if they are piled separately, the wind will blow away the smaller piles. Since there is some circumstance when it is useful for different types of feed to be joined together, like in a case of a display, so it shouldn't fly away, they can be combined to complete the minimum amount for liability. Okay, so we're going into the next Mishnah. Amoitzi oichlim kegorgeres chayov. One who carries out food stuffs, anything fit for human consumption, the equivalent of a dried fig, size of a dried fig. This is Halacha LeMoshe Sinai, a law taught orally to Moshe at Sinai, and is not taught in the written Torah. That the size of a fig. Chayov is labo mitztofin zem and foodstuffs can be combined with one another. So when we say foodstuffs, it means any kinds of food that is good for human consumption. Okay? Mipnei sheshovu b'shurem, because they are alike in their prescribed measure. Dry equivalent of dried or a dried fig. Doesn't make a difference what it is. Chutz mikliposen, except for their shells, vegarinein, and their pits. So the shells and the pits, v'oktzeyen, and their stems, v'suban, their coarse bran, umor senan, and their fine bran. Rabbi Yehuda, chutz miklipe adoshin, all shells may not be combined, except for the shells of lentils, which may be combined, because they are cooked with the lentils. You're not taking out the shell for you cook it, rather you cook it together. The Gemara challenges the ruling of the Mishnah of Suban and their coarse bran, and their fine bran cannot be combined with flour to complete the minimum. Vatenam will learn in a Mishnah 5 quarters of kav, of a kav of flour, and a bit more. Chayov in bechalo are obligated in chalo. Hein v'suban umursenan, their coarse bran and their fine bran all combined to complete the 5 quarter kavs. We see that the bran can be combined with flour to complete a minimum measure. Omar Abaye said, in that case, bran may be combined with flour. Sheken oni oichel pito beisa belusa, because a poor man, indeed eats his bread made of impure dough on refined flour, more of a coarse flour. It means that the shells are in there. What does it mean, more a coarse flour? That it's not as refined. It's not sifted as much. Rabbi Yehuda Omer chutz miklipat doshim, all shells may not be combined except for the shells of lentils. Amizbaj lo zimoin, which are cooked with the lentils. Adoshim ein, Rabbi Yehuda implies here that shells of lentils may indeed be combined. Pulin loy, but the shells of beans may not. Vatanyo, and however it was taught in otherwise in a bite. Rabbi Yehuda Omer chutz miklipat pulin vadoshim, all shells may not be combined except for the shells of beans and lentils. There in the Baisa, Rabbi Yehuda sanctions the combining of bean shells to reach the minimum. Question mark. So they do combine. We said before, they don't combine. Well, it says lo kasha. There's no difficulty. This Baisa speaks of the fresh produce, habatike, whereas this Mishnah speaks of old produce. Why old? What is the reason that shells of old beans may not be combined with the beans? Because they look like flies in the plate. Therefore, they're not combined. They're taken out. Since no one eats them, they cannot be combined to complete the minimum measure. Hadron aloch klal godol. We shall turn to you, chapter 7, klal godol. We'll start the new Mishnah. Okay, put it over there so you can take it. Going into, that's yours, right?
That's mine, yeah.
Okay, B'siyata Ishmaya. Let me see.
This book he never used yet.
Which one?
He bought the whole set. We should learn a Refuah Shlema for Bracha Bas Rivka.
Refuah Shlema to Bracha Bas Rivka. And everyone who needs Refuah Shlema should have Refuah Shlema.
Right.
And the world should also have a Refuah Shlema. Mashiach should come. Mashiach should come. Okay, so David, do you have the 4 stars also?
You'll probably get it.
You got it together. Well, after this, we're gonna have also 4 stars.
Hopefully, we'll be together for that.
Yeah. So this going from page 76 to 115, right? Yeah, David says he has it.
Good.
Wonderful. Okay, let's do the Mishnah. So if one who carries out wine, so the previous chapter concluded by delineating the minimum measures of various foodstuffs required in order to be liable for carrying them out on the Shabbos. This chapter continues by doing the same for drinks, liquids. We spoke about food. Now we're speaking about beverages, liquids, and other substances. So one who carries out wine, kedem zigas hakois, enough to mix a cup with it. Enough to mix a cup with it would mean the amount of pure wine that when mixed with the proper amount of water yields a full cup of wine. So the Gemara will identify the size cup of which the Mishnah refers. So we all know that back in the day, the wine was very strong, maybe still today, and being diluted a lot, and so they would mix it with water. So how much wine does it need to take out in a cup? They didn't tell us the size of the cup, but how much wine you need to take out to be liable. So he says, the Mishnah tells us, enough to mix a cup with it.
So was that strong wine?
The Mishnah refers to pure undiluted wine.
No, but it says
raw wine was very contracted and needed to be mixed with water before it was suitable for drinking.
Right. It was really, really, really concentrated and hot and strong.
Maybe not even drinkable.
Exactly.
Cholov, or he takes out milk, kedei gimio, enough for a swallow.
Okay.
So you know melulugmo is a amount that you can't, that your mouth is like,
Puffed up.
yeah. It says chickful.
A cheekful. Okay.
Yeah. Dvash, if he takes out honey, kedei ten lakos is enough to place on a sore. I guess they used honey as a medicinal
Right. The maluka
remedy.
The maluka honey they still use.
Manuka honey, manuka.
Manuka.
They're coming from New Zealand. Yeah. But honey in general, I think, is healthy if it's being used.
On sores, yeah.
No, I'm saying I think in general,
To take some. Yeah.
manuka honey is you can eat it, but it's. I'm saying I think in general it's good, and the right amount, and obviously the raw, the real thing.
Right.
Dvash, so enough to place on a sore, which is even a small amount. It says in 4. Is a blister that forms on the backs of horses and camels due to the constant rubbing of the burdens that they carry. He also cites an alternative explanation in the name of his teachers, who explained to mean that an abrasion on the back of one's hand or leg.
Like a scrape.
Yeah, ritva mahak. For further discussion. So. Next is enough to anoint a small limb. Loju a kilo, enough to mix an eye salve. Salve, yeah. So, that's shemen. So shemen, oil, kedasuch ever cotton.
Right.
Enough to anoint a small limb. Mayim kedoshim with a kilo, water enough to mix an eye salve. Ushar kol hamashkim revis, and all other liquids a revis. V'chol hasheifochim berevis, and all wastewater a revis. Rabbi Shimon oimer kulam revis. The minimum of all these to simplify everything. He says everything is revis. I don't know if his intention was to simplify, but he said all of the different kinds of liquids and beverages that we spoke about, they're all limited to the minimal amount is revis. And all these smaller measurements given by the previous Tana were not stated except for those that store these substances. Tana one is liable if he carries out enough to mix a nice cup. What is a nice cup? Because we didn't speak about the size of the cup.
Right.
So what is a nice cup? The cup used for the blessing after the meal. It says in 12, the cup of wine used for Birkas Hamazon is called a nice cup. Like the Suda Shlishis we used to do in Shul.
Yeah.
Or a cup of wine.
Yeah, who can forget those days?
So kosher bracha, the cup used for the blessing after the meal. Maikos yave kosher bracha. Amar Rav Nachman Amar Ravua kosher bracha, the cup of wine used for blessing. Tzor sheba reva revis must contain a quarter of a revis of pure wine. Kadesh im zegenu, so that he can mix the wine with water. V'yam v'dal revis, and the mixture will amount to revis. Rabbi Ravua maintains that the cup used for Birkas Hamazon must contain a revis of properly mixed wine. Furthermore, he is of the opinion that properly mixed wine contains 3 parts of water to 1 part of wine. Hence, a quarter revis of pure wine is required, so it can be mixed with 3/4 of a revis of water to compose the required cup. So kosher bracha, the cup of wine used for blessing tzor sheva revis must contain a quarter of a revis of pure wine. Kadeshim zegenu, so that he can mix the wine with water. V'yamid revis, and the mixture will amount to revis. The Gemara knows that this can be derived from the Mishnah as well. Amarava fananami, we too, Tanina, we have also learned in our Mishnah, one who carries out wine is liable if he carries out enough to mix a cup with it. V'tanya lo kedem zigas kois yofe, and a Baisa was taught an explanation of this Mishnah, enough to mix a nice cup, the cup used for the blessing after meals. And the latter part of the Mishnah states, and all other liquids, one is liable only if he takes out the revis. From this we can derive that one is not liable for taking out liquids that are meant to be drunk as is, if they are in amounts of less than a revis. It follows, then, that one should only be liable for taking out enough pure wine to mix a cup containing a full revis, 1/4 of a revis. Thus, it can be proven from our Mishnah as well that the cup used for the blessing after meals must contain 1/4 revis of pure wine. So we'll stop here. God willing, we'll continue tomorrow. If you stick with us, we'll learn Halacha, Shulchan Aruch, Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. You want to do Sultan later? You wanted to leave early? It's up to you. You said you wanted to leave at 9:30. It's already 10 o'clock.
Yeah, all right. Okay, yeah, we're going to get into what got us to now. All right, just, all right, you open.
What are we holding?
42A1.
Okay, so let's do it at 7.
All right, 7, fine. All
David,
right.
stay with it. Come at 7 o'clock. You can come at 7. Let's do the halacha, Shulchan Aruch.
Right. Pinchas wasn't on, maybe he's working.
What?
Pinchas wasn't on.
No, I didn't see Pinchas. Where is Pinchas? So we learned yesterday, interesting halacha about laws of Shabbos, about obviously you're not allowed to whiten wool, to turn wool into white, to make it whiter. And what does that has to do with us? Like, who whitens wool today? It has to do with us when it comes to washing our clothes. So it says washing our clothes is a problem on Shabbos.
Yeah.
Why? Because it's the same, it's coming from the derivative, a melacha of, like we said, tolda of melaben, of whitening.
Right.
So it says, therefore, this is really applicable. It says you should not walk in a place where it's very wet and you can fall and then you get wet. Places that are, maybe there's a lot of puddles and things like that, and it's raining a lot or whatever, and you might fall and then come out and you might wring out your clothes, you might squeeze them. So there's that concern. He's also concerned that people will see you there. If you come home and you're all wet, you take off your clothes and hang them, people would think that you did laundry on Shabbos, right? So 57 in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, section 301, it says, our sages only forbade spreading one's clothes out to dry on Shabbos. If, however, they were spread out to dry on Friday, he is not obligated to remove them on Shabbos because of the impression that it might be created. It is, however, forbidden to spread them out on Shabbos in all instances, even when they are not drenched with water, but with sweat. Don't hang clothes out on Shabbos. Okay?
Well, is there between spreading them out flat or hanging them in the,
Outside is.
in the shower,
Yeah. It says,
in the bathroom.
it is, however, forbidden to spread them out on Shabbos in all instances, even if they were not drenched with water but with sweat.
Right. Okay. I don't do it anyway. I kind of walk around with the sweat when it's hot in the summer.
Okay. Bruchim Tio, have a wonderful day. Shiach now.
We walk the shul on Shabbos.